The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Could another playoff blowout be loading in the Rose Bowl?
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks.
I feel as if this game is destined to once again come down to the wire. On the one hand, there are two parts of me. There's the college football fan in me, and there's the Oregon fan in me. The college football fan is sitting there, popcorn ready. I mean, I've got some in the pantry. I might pop it during the game. Yum, yum, yeah, that's great. The Oregon fan in me, can we just get a repeat of Florida State 2015? Because that was a great day. 59-20. 34 points off turnovers. That was a fun day. I don't see that happening here for two reasons. Number one, both of these teams are incredibly talented. You do not have one roster that is measurably better than the other. You don't even have a position group matchup that I feel like one team can dominate throughout the course of the game to the point where they're able to just overwhelm the opponent. For example, when Oregon played Oregon State earlier this year, the offensive line completely and utterly dominated Oregon State. The first half was close, the second half was not. And then you saw Oregon run the ball to the tune of 7.5 yards a carry, and Dillon Gabriel had all day to throw. That was a matchup that Oregon State was not going to be able to overcome or make up for elsewhere. There aren't any of those sorts of matchups in this sort of game. When you talk about weaknesses for Oregon or weaknesses for Ohio State, you're talking about relative weaknesses. And I'm going to talk about one of Oregon's weaknesses later on today's show. But you're not talking about this unit has been dreadful or this player hasn't been good. You're talking about guys who are expected to perform at a 10 and are maybe only performing at an 8. So if another 9 or an 8 in their matchup in the game comes out, well, maybe there's a bit of an advantage there. But the way that this game played out the first time is how I fully expect this game to play out the second time. And I went back and did some digging. Oregon was actually a 9-point favorite against Florida State in that Rose Bowl in 2015, the 2014 season, of course, in the college football playoff semifinal, which I actually didn't know until I was doing my prep for today's show, and that's a much bigger number than I thought. Ohio State is favored by 2.5 points. I'm not surprised by that at all. It doesn't surprise me. Number one, Vegas favored Ohio State at Autzen Stadium the first time they played. Number two, Ohio State just walloped Tennessee 42-17, and it didn't even feel like it was that close. It was 21-0 before Tennessee could even figure out what in the heck was going on in Columbus in that game. And the third reason is Ohio State's a really good team. And what I think both of these teams have shown throughout the year is that their ceilings are national championship level. Their floors are losing to a team they shouldn't. Now, Oregon hasn't hit that floor yet. Ohio State did against Michigan. But everything about this matchup tells me these teams are going to play a close game. And the other reason as well is I have had a high level of confidence, after some early struggles, to be sure, in Dillon Gabriel and the Oregon passing attack. They have rewarded that confidence throughout the course of the season. Then you look at Will Howard on the other side, and the way they just played against Tennessee, who I have said for quite a while on Locked On College Football, a defense I believed in, that I do think is good, and Ohio State was just better. When you have quarterbacks and good receivers, that can be a blanket for any other sort of problem that you might be having. Clemson, for instance, top to bottom, I don't think has quite as good of a roster as Texas. But why was Clemson able to hang around? I know they lost by 14 points, but there was a goal line stand, or else that was a one-possession game with about 5 minutes to go. Why were they able to do that? Because Cade Klubnik was just throwing it all over the yard. So one thing I've also been thinking about going into this game is I expect it to be tight. I expect every cliche you can think of in a close game to come to fruition. Something like turnovers, third down, special teams, execution, momentum swing, all of those sorts of things. Tomorrow I'll have a crossover with Jay Stevens of Locked On Buckeyes, and we'll discuss, the specific matchups, what to go back to, adjustments, and all of those things. But at the end of the day, to me, this feels like a heavyweight bout where the team that executes better, maybe the team that starts stronger in the first quarter, Ohio State's feeling good, Oregon's more rested, rest versus rust, all of those things in the first quarter. That's where I get the sense this game is going to be decided. Just a gut feeling. Plus, it's the Rose Bowl. Oregon had that blowout in 2015, but every other Rose Bowl game, Ohio State in the 2009 season, 9-point game. Wisconsin 2020, 1-point game. Wisconsin 2012, 3-point game. Typically, Oregon gets to the Rose Bowl and plays a close game. But the other thing, going back to the Florida State point, which I know Oregon fan, I would love to have the power to just speak that into existence. I would love for there to be no stress at the end of this game, knowing that Oregon's going to win. I think it's going to feel a lot like last time. It'll come down to a play, a stop, a drive, a kick, a something, because that's just where I feel like these two teams are at. Oregon hasn't lost yet. I think that that's an advantage for them mentally, saying, hey, we're the Kings, we're the Big Ten champions. You come and you're trying to knock us off the throne because they're number one at the top of college football right now. Ohio State's out for revenge. Those are, I think, a couple of incredibly motivating elements for both coaching staffs to use in this particular game. So I expect it to be close. I expect it to be tight. I expect it to be fun. And by the way, if you're into tradition, lore, and all those superstitions and whatnot, I'm incredibly superstitious. There have been 2 instances in which the number 1 seed in the college football playoff has played at the Rose Bowl. The number 1 seed is 2-0. Last year, Michigan beat Alabama 27-20 in overtime. 2020, Alabama beat Notre Dame 31-14. Both those teams went on to win the national championship. You make of that whatever you like. You can take that for nothing. You can take that for something. I couldn't care less. I'm just sharing information here for those who care about the wonders and mystique of the college football world. But also remember, Michigan won that game, went on to win the national championship. They were a 4th and 2 failed conversion away from never getting to the title game at all. On that game-tying drive to send the game to overtime, Michigan needed a 4th and 2 conversion. And by the way, special teams, pretty important in that game. I believe both teams missed field goals in that one, or else maybe you never get to overtime. Those are the sorts of things that are going to define this game. I know Oregon would like to win by a comfortable 10 to 20 points. Something tells me it's going to be decided by less than a touchdown.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $500, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, do live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And you can go ahead and take a look at the second round of the college football playoff. Despite having already beaten Ohio State, Oregon are 2.5-point underdogs against the Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl. Penn State heads into the Fiesta Bowl favored by 10.5 points over Heisman runner-up Ashton Jeanty and the Boise State Broncos. Both teams are a combined 10-0 in the Fiesta. Despite the larger line, this should be a good one. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs.
Early in the week, we talked about some big picture things, or late last week, I should say. We talked about big picture things, some general narratives, some of which we said you should pay attention to, some of which we said you should completely ignore. I will say, in terms of the nitty-gritty of the football play, I haven't really changed my tune from about a week and a half ago, what feels like 6 months ago, when we first started talking about this matchup against Notre Dame. And I said very candidly that I did not want to play Notre Dame. I am scared of Notre Dame. I don't like this matchup against Notre Dame because the thing that Notre Dame does really well, which is play good defense, particularly against the run, and offer a physicality in running the football themselves.
That's right.
Is something that Georgia has really struggled with this year. Texas and Notre Dame are very different football teams. Georgia has played really well against a really good team. We like to hang our hat on that. Very different style, very different type of football team to Notre Dame. I think about Notre Dame, and it's much more of a physical, hit you in the face, and try to dominate time of possession, line of scrimmage. And Georgia's defense has struggled against offenses like that this year. And Notre Dame is the best of all of those offenses that Georgia will have played this year. And so I think going into this matchup with Riley Leonard at quarterback, with Love and whatever that other guy's name is at running back, both those guys really good. I think if you're a Georgia fan, you can't help but be nervous going into this matchup. And then on the other side, Clint, Notre Dame likes to take away the run, and they do that very well. It's not like Georgia's a running football team, right?
No.
They're 13th in the SEC in rushing per game. But with Gunnar Stockton at the helm, the fear is that Georgia might need to lean on the run a little bit more. And so that worries me as a Georgia fan. And so going into this game, like I can't help but be anxious about this matchup for Georgia. How are you feeling from a football standpoint heading into the Sugar Bowl?
I'm going to give you three things that excite me now that I've sat on it more. This was,
by the way, excited, nervous, don't sleep on us tomorrow. He's giving you bonus content.
I'm giving you bonus content. I'm letting you know what I'm looking forward to. It's just like before the SEC game. The more that I came upon the SEC kickoff time, the more I felt great about Georgia's chances in that game because I just looked at footballing. I didn't mess with all the other noise going around. Now, a lot has been made. Exactly what you pointed out. What you said is true. And the three things that national media types, who are morons, by the way, you shouldn't listen to them for anything because they don't know the teams. They just know, Notre Dame's a blue chip, quote unquote, blue blood, and they're good. So they'll win. And I just saw them play last week. And so my eyes tell me they're good. So they're going to win because Georgia's crap. Oh, and Georgia has
no quarterback.
No quarterback.
No quarterback.
Because these are things. What you just said is absolutely true, Daniel. Price, Love, Leonard, the three-headed running attack in the backfield for Notre Dame is very good. Get to the second level. I don't know if we have anybody in the secondary. Malachi Starks might be fast enough. Julian Humphreys might be fast enough to track some fools down. That might be true. But Love and Price can just turn on the jets.
You better keep them contained early. You better not let them get shoulder to shoulder. If they're even, they're
gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Dan Jackson needs you to shore up that tackle in the alley. You're going to be fine, Dan. You're going to be fine. Just keep on being you, brother. Just do what you've done all year long and we're going to be fine. Okay. So one, the thing that national narrative talks about, Gunnar Stockton, and here's what just a feel of the game. We have alphas in this locker room for Georgia. Dudes that don't follow anybody else but themselves and Kirby Smart. They couldn't be coached by anybody else because they don't respect anybody else. Gunnar comes in and Gunnar has this locker. You hear post-interview stuff all the time, or post-practice interviews from these people all the time, these players. And they are saying, Gunnar is the real deal. Gunnar knows what he's doing. He's for real. The juice, as I said, when he came in and instantly brought an electric spark to the team. Not a surgical spark, but an absolute, I'm going to just take this team, put it on my shoulders, and I'm going to give a vibe that nobody else can replicate. That's what Gunnar brings. And so if you look what he was coming out of high school, everybody forgot, Daniel, what this kid was like coming out of high school, apparently. Like, he can't throw. Oh, really? Go look at records that he just brought down, hucking the ball. deep
Interesting.
shots. Go look at, again, I don't put anything into reports of people except when I hear it validated from coaches. And I've heard a couple of rumblings of the defense getting beat on a couple of deep passes that Gunner's been putting on them in the backfield. Okay.
Whoopsie.
Thing number one, Gunner is a dude. Like, I don't know. I'm not guaranteeing his performance is going to be MVP worthy, but what I'm telling you is that I don't anticipate a drop off. That's thing one. Thing two, heard a lot of people talking about Notre Dame off to fast starts in their games.
Sure.
Lots of points early on. Georgia, notably, not
same?
No, Daniel.
No, not the same. Sorry.
No.
Sorry.
Nope.
I'll sit this one out.
The opposite actually is what happens.
Sure.
Thing two that I'm feeling about this game. I went back and I looked. People were talking about this. So I looked, the 5 games of note for Notre Dame, the one loss to Northern Illinois, which we've said is a different team now. But Northern Illinois got 10 points in the first half, 7 for Notre Dame. Texas A&M was tied 6-6. Louisville, 14-24. That was a weird game. Notre Dame against Georgia Tech, 14-7. And USC, Notre Dame, 14-14 going into the half.
Oh,
Daniel,
fast starts.
That's not their fast starts came against, now wait for it, inferior opponents on a weak schedule.
Well, that's funny.
Yes. Of course, when you have a good running game and you come out of the gates strong, you should
And
be
you're
able to
playing
do
a
that.
service academy.
Guys, I like the match. Once I actually dug into it, once I heard all the national media idiots talk about it, and then I was like, oh, let me take some things. I start looking into it. I go, huh. So you're telling me they were even or a little bit ahead going into half, and Georgia has been even or behind most of the year at half, and it hasn't phased us at all. Notre Dame needs to have a 21-point lead at half if it wants to have a shot in this game. Okay?
I agree.
They need to have a 21. If they don't, we go into half anywhere within a one-score game, I'm feeling mighty fine.
Cam Scannaboo is the workhorse ASU needs to win football games.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We got to start with Sam Leavitt, though. This is the key to winning football games. Here's a crazy concept for you. You're only as good as your quarterback is. Mind-blowing stuff, right? That's the key to this game. ASU playing Texas. Real quick, horns down for you guys. Also, y'all snitched on me to Jonathan Davis from Locked On Longhorns. But don't worry, tomorrow is a crossover episode with Jonathan. We have a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to you guys checking that one out, whether you're Sun Devil fans or Longhorn fans. So turn on notifications to get that update. Anyways, speaking of Longhorns, Sam Leavitt in the press conference last night, or it might have been Friday night, was talking about going up against Quinn Ewers. And he said in particular, something along the lines, paraphrasing here, he is looking forward to being the best quarterback on the field, proving he is better than Quinn Ewers. Sam Leavitt, very confident quarterback. He's not been shy this year about talking about the work he puts in and how much he has been working with coaches and working with his teammates and studying in the film room and everything like that. He's very vocal about the work he puts in, and it shows on the field. He backs it up. One thing we haven't really seen from him this year, and let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, we haven't really seen him call out individuals and say, I'm going to be better than them. We have heard Sam Leavitt say this year, I'm the best quarterback in the country. And real quick, that's the way I want my quarterback to talk. Why would I not want my quarterback to say I'm the best in the country? I would want that even if it was, I don't know, just like Jeff Sims or Trenton Bourguet or one of our backups. Like, I would want them to say I'm the best quarterback in the country, because that confidence is what wins you football games. You don't play with confidence, you're not going to win. Sam Leavitt has that confidence. But to flat out challenge himself against Quinn Ewers was not something I was expecting. And again, if I'm wrong, let me know. But I don't think we have seen Sam Leavitt individually call someone out and say, yeah, I'm going to prove I'm better than them. And again, I love that mentality, but it just wasn't what I was expecting. And if you think that Texas didn't use that as billboard material, you're wrong. Colin Simmons, the star freshman edge rusher, who I talked about in detail on yesterday's show, so check that one out if you did not see that one, because Colin Simmons will be the reason ASU loses if they don't find a way to stop him. He had reposted it to his Instagram, essentially like, bet, we'll see. We'll see if you're better than Quinn. And Quinn's not the guy to talk to the media or anything, but he heard it, and that's going to be in the back of his mind. Quinn Ewers is a very good quarterback too, by the way. Very, very good quarterback. It's quite the challenge for Sam. But let's take that all out of the equation now that we have addressed that. Here's why Sam Leavitt is the big X factor here. The biggest X factor. Of the 5 X factors we're going to talk about, Sam Leavitt is at the top of the list. Here's why. He's your starting quarterback. He has played very, very good football over the last month and a half. 16 touchdowns, 1 interception over the course of 5 games. 5-0 in those games, including BYU, K-State, and Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. He's played the best of the best competition in the conference. He has shut them down. He has been nothing short of outstanding. I've said before, and I will continue to double down on this. You can't name 10 quarterbacks in the nation that are playing better football than Sam Leavitt is right now. He's on another level. He's got a chance to prove that I'm not just on a hot streak, right? I am flat out one of the best quarterbacks in the country. This is your chance to prove it, because Texas, pound for pound, has one of the best secondaries in football. I have not been shy about singing praises of Jahdae Barron, who just won the Jim Thorpe Award as the best defensive back in the nation. They've got several other guys as well back there that are terrific football players. And you're going to be playing without Jordan Tyson. This is a huge, huge challenge for Sam Leavitt to overcome. And he's going to need to be elite in this game to win. Like, I'm talking no turnovers, but he's got to score touchdowns. Like, if Sam Leavitt goes, let's say, 15 of 21 for 180 yards, no touchdowns, no turnovers, that's not enough. Even the no turnovers part, that's not enough. He's got to be perfect without the turnovers, but he's got to be one of the primary scorers for the Sun Devils to win this game. It's time to prove you're an elite quarterback, like I am saying, like others are saying, like you, Sam Leavitt, are saying. You got to take that next step. And quite frankly, ASU is just not going to advance in this game or in future games without Sam Leavitt being able to take that next step. And Sam, not just the smack talk, he is also just flat out really excited about this matchup. He's been very vocal about this is a great opportunity for us and all that good stuff. He's excited and he's ready to prove himself. Last thing I want to mention in terms of Sam Leavitt. Cam Skattebo, the people's running back, as we call him here on Locked On Sun Devils. He can run it, he can catch it, he can pass it, he can punt it, and he's your mom's favorite player. Texas is going to key in on him. Here's the good news. Texas elite passing defense, quality run defense. They're not horrible. They're not elite. Sounds like Skattebo can run on them. But as I have been told and as I would expect, Texas is going to key in on Cam Skattebo. We've heard that all year long. Let's see if it works. But let's say they do. Let's say this is the one team that actually basically eliminates Cam Skattebo from the equation. Okay? Sam Leavitt, it's up to you. It's up to you, because if Skattebo is truly erased from this game, then Leavitt's your only option for scoring points. That's why he's the biggest X factor. Here's another X factor on offense, the offensive line. You are going up against one of, if not the best pass rushes in college football. Colin Simmons scares the bejesus out of me. I said that on the previous episode. Again, check that out if you haven't. But I flat out will tell you that's probably the best freshman in the nation. Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, that's the only guy who pushes him, in my opinion. This is a good freshman class, too. That's how high I view Colin Simmons. and he's played up to it. He leads them in sacks, but they got plenty of other guys as well that can generate some pressure. ASU needs to find a way to control the line of scrimmage, and not just for Cam Scadaboo's sake, but especially for the passing game. Like, again, this pass rush with Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill Jr. and the defensive tackles and everything like that. If Sam Leavitt's going to have the game that we need him to have and the one that he believes he's going to have, then he's got to be able to stay upright. ASU's offensive line, I've been very critical about them this year. And I've taken a step back and I've gone, maybe I was a little too harsh. They haven't given up a lot of sacks, but there is pressure that they allow. And Texas is one of those teams that they're going to turn pressure into sacks. So they have got to be able to play at the highest level of competition. Because this Texas defense, which has 40 sacks on the year, I think 41, I have it here so I can just pull it up. They're arguably the best of the best, man. You're not going to 41 sacks. Yep. Okay. You're not going to find many teams in the country that are going to challenge your offensive line the way that these guys will. And you haven't seen a team this year that is going to challenge your offensive line the way that Texas is going to challenge your offensive line. You have got to be at your best. Sam Leavitt, he's going to be your best chance to win this game, especially if Scadaboo is taken out of it. But if you can't keep him upright, you're not going to have the passing game. It's gone. Because you can't, you literally cannot give your quarterback the opportunity to throw the football. You're going to shrink your offense so significantly that now it does become easy to key in on Cam Scadaboo. Because even if Scadaboo's not getting the ball, well, Colin Simmons is just going to get a sack. Like, offensive line, massive key to success here. One of the biggest X factors. And just maintaining the ability to control the line of scrimmage. And again, it's also really important for running the football. They have been challenged this year. Teams have stacked the box and they said, we're going to stop Cam Scadaboo. And there's been times where the offensive line has struggled, and there's been times where the offensive line has stepped up. Here's another chance to step up. I put more priority on keeping Sam Leavitt upright, but you've still got to be able to create those lanes for Cam Scadaboo. Offensive line, super important here. One of the biggest X factors. I would put them slightly below Sam Leavitt.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What has this season been like for you? Right? Because you talk about a program like Texas where the expectations are sky high every year, right? It's conference championship, national championship every year. Whereas Arizona State, you talked about it on your episode, they were picked to be bottom in the Big 12 this year. Vegas had them set around 4 or 5 wins. And now they are in the college football playoffs as one of the 8 teams remaining that can win a national championship. So what has this season been like for you in terms of covering this team that you've talked about? Everybody overlooked, but, you know, through unity, right? Togetherness, you know, just friendship, grit, all of that. They now, once again, are one of the 8 teams remaining vying for a national championship.
It's nothing short of magical to see this team so quickly turn things around. The standards that we have in Tempe for ASU, we go bowling more often than not. We're used to 8 to 9 win seasons, get us a 10-win season every once in a while. Let's compete. Let's have a good time. A lot of people have said that Arizona State University, with majority of their athletics, they've been called the sleeping giant for a long time. The Phoenix area is one of the biggest metropolitan cities in the country. ASU has everything to offer. They've got just about every sport, including like women's rugby and stuff like that. So, I mean, if ASU doesn't have it, you don't need it. With all the resources at their hands and so many boosters ready to jump in, it's just been a matter of time until everything finally culminated and came together for ASU. But no one thought it was going to be this soon. When Kenny Dillingham comes to Arizona State and he says, "Hey, we're going to activate the Valley. We're going to get everybody in on this program in ways that we should have been able to do years ago." We were all really excited and we all believed him. We all bought in. But this was a coach that was taking over for a team that was still dealing with NCAA sanctions from the recruiting violations committed by Herm Edwards, Antonio Pierce, and the previous staff during COVID-19. And this is supposed to be at least a 3, maybe even a 4-year project to get ASU back. So for them to turn the corner this quickly really shows you how important and how fast everyone is bought into this culture that he has set and that the players have from there executed and created. ASU has had, I think, almost 30 kids from this year's roster already confirm that they will be returning for next year's roster too. So you're looking at sustained success for ASU as long as everything stays in touch. And I mean, this is a really good team right now. They're a very special team. I'm really, really excited about them. Real quick to address that one episode that everyone found.
Oh, no. I have comments written down.
Okay.
I have comments. I watched all 35 minutes. Don't worry. I'm going to give you every opportunity to address a lot of things you said. But I just want you to finish. Okay. If you're finished with this soliloquy about Arizona State, you know,
I think I'm good.
That's great.
I think I'm good.
Team, but they're about to run into some dogs, you know what I'm saying, on Wednesday. But we'll see what happens.
Very, very, very big dogs.
Right. Exactly. So, you know, it's rare, very rare that I'll ever sit down and listen to a whole Locked On episode, right? And you know what I mean? I love everybody on the network. Everybody does a great job. But it's just very rare that I'll sit down and listen to a whole episode, right? Mm-hmm. But you had me locked in for 35 minutes, all right?
Well, there you go.
Outside of like the horns down, the repeated horns down, you know what I'm saying? You said a lot of things that intrigued me, all right? So I wrote them down, you know, because like I said, everybody was telling me to listen to you, listen to what you had to say. So I'm like, you know, let me go see what my brother Richie had to say. And I thought you had some really intriguing comments, brother. So, you know, Longhorn fans wanted you to come outside. You know what I'm saying? And one thing I want to say is I do appreciate it because I've talked to so many hosts this year that's like, yeah, Texas is going to kill us. Yeah, Texas is going to blow us out. Yeah, Texas is going to run all over us. And you're like, no, Arizona State absolutely can win this game. Arizona State absolutely has what it takes to win this game. So I appreciate it that you're just not doom and gloom on that other side. But like I said, I appreciate you. Now you need to come outside and address some of these comments. So the first one you said, the first one I have for you, you said Texas has not played up to their level of competition or talent this year. So what do you mean by that? Can you clarify that? And what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when I look at Texas, from number one player on the team to number however many they have on that roster, from quarterback 1, 2, 3, 4, however, top of the depth chart, bottom of the depth chart, the coaching staff, everything. Texas to me should be at least the second best team in the country. And I don't really know who stacks up to them in terms of that talent, that coaching, the fan base that is bought in and everything. But I feel like watching them this year, I was left waiting for them to just blow the doors off of everyone. And I felt like most of those games should have been 20 to 30 point wins. It wasn't like this super difficult schedule. It wasn't a super cakewalk or anything, but I felt like majority of the teams they faced were inferior by quite a bit, and that Texas should have just dog walked the majority of the schedule. And I mean, they won everything except the Georgia game, and you beat down Clemson. And I thought that Clemson game should have been what we saw for most of the year. And there were still some warts in the game, but I just, for me, what I meant by that was this Texas team, top to bottom, I don't know how many teams should compete with them. I just feel like their wins should have been more dominant. I don't think they should have lost very many games this year, which they didn't. So that's all I meant by that. That was not supposed to be slanderous at all.
Oh, you're good, right? You're good. You're good, Richie.
Some
We
of the
gotta
other
keep
stuff was.
the energy, Richie. You're good. Let's keep the energy. You know what I'm saying? What
Let's
I'll say is that my argument to that is we all know it's hard to win in football, right? It's
Yes,
hard to
of
win in
course.
football. They beat Clemson by 14 points, right? Texas has 12 wins this year at this point. 12 wins, including the Clemson game, and 2 losses. So they're 12-2 against Georgia. 11 of those wins have been by double digits. So my argument would be they have beaten teams the way that they've beaten Clemson. Now, I get that you could say this Texas team maybe should have beat everybody by 20 to 30, maybe. You know what I'm saying? But it's hard to win football games. I look at this team as a team that is here as one of the 8 teams remaining that can win a championship.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, outside of the Vanderbilt game, has beaten every other team by double digits, which I think you may be undervaluing a little bit, Richie. So I'm going to say that. The next thing I want to talk
totally
about.
Fair. And Vandy is sneaky. So I don't think that's a bad thing at all. They beat the Bama teams this year.
Right. You said Texas in Atlanta is going to get hit harder than they've been hit in years. I just want to let you know that this is a team that over the last 3 years has played Alabama twice and Georgia twice. What gives you the impression that Arizona State, no disrespect to the Sun Devils, right? But Arizona State is going to hit Texas harder than they've been hit in years?
That's another one where I don't know that where I was saying that was supposed to be like in terms of talent. Like I know we don't have Ray Lewis and Sean Taylor and stuff like that. That's pummeling guys or anything. The way that Bama and Georgia have had some of those enforcers on their defense. Where I was coming from was a lot more of that motivation, that passion, all the stuff that at the end of the day I can talk about till I'm blue in the face, but a lot more just passion for ASU because like we said at the top of the show, they weren't supposed to be here. We talk about Bama, Georgia, Texas, some of the other teams across the country, Ohio State, Oregon, like they're all supposed to be here, and it's because they have so many talented players and certainly players that can absolutely smoke you if you go over the middle, and they're going to put you in the dirt, and it's going to hurt. ASU is just there's so much of like we have to prove ourselves, and we've been overlooked all year, and we have to show the world that we belong. And to get to that point, you've got to play above your level. So we do have talented players. It's not like we don't have good linebackers and good safeties and stuff like that, but they're going to have to hit like they've never hit before. And that's where I'm coming from with that statement. Like I understand the talent difference for sure. And to a outsider's perspective of not ASU fans, totally understand why that would be construed that way. It was not supposed to be that way. That episode was very much a rah-rah episode.
I love it. I love it. I want you to rah-rah right now, Richie. That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Keep the rah-rah right now. Because you said if Texas overlooks ASU, they will lose. And you said what is more dangerous than a talented team is a driven team, right? So my question is Texas not driven? Like, does Texas not want to win too? Does Texas not have the talent and the culture? Does Texas not have the talent and the drive? Like, do you think Texas is just going to walk into the Peach Bowl and be like, oh, that's just Arizona State. Oh, it's just the playoffs. Or do you think Texas is trying to put Arizona State in the dirt too?
They're very driven, and they have been told all year, you don't deserve to be in the SEC. You're the little brother, even though, like I said earlier, pound for pound, you're one of the most talented rosters in college football. That is a driven team for sure. For one of your comments, there is a part of me that does think Texas will go in and be like, it's Arizona State. We're going to crush them. But no, that does not mean they're not a driven team or a team that has nothing to play for. They have a lot to play for, and they have a lot to prove and all that good stuff. So, I mean, they're just as motivated as ASU is. It's different motivations where Texas is trying to prove like, hey, we are heavyweight contenders. We need to be respected as such. ASU is more trying to prove like, hey, we are an up and coming program. This is not a Cinderella team. We demand the respect that we have been very patiently earning this year. The AP voters, which is a whole other rant, have just been so lukewarm about giving ASU the love that they deserve. 2 losses this year. One of them was without Sam Levitt, but a loss is a loss. You won't hear me argue too much about that. Like, it is what it is. I don't like moral victories or anything like that. Wins are wins, losses are losses at the end of the day. So ASU has just been overlooked all year long, which has led to their motivation. But no, of course, Texas has a lot that they've been playing for as well.
Right. I think at this point, both teams are 3 games away from winning a national championship. I think motivation and drive is everybody's trying to hoist that trophy at the end of the year for sure. So great stuff from Richie thus far on this Locked On crossover. I guess great stuff from both of us. So even though I've been more in interview mode, in terms of Richie.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $500, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, do live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And you can go ahead and take a look at the second round of the college football playoff. Despite having already beaten Ohio State, Oregon are 2.5-point underdogs against the Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl. Penn State heads into the Fiesta Bowl favored by 10.5 points over Heisman runner-up Ashton Jeanty and the Boise State Broncos. Both teams are a combined 10-0 in the Fiesta. Despite the larger line, this should be a good one. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Ohio State must make Jeremiah Smith the focal point of the game plan to beat Oregon.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ohio State must make Jeremiah Smith the focal point of their game plan to beat Oregon, because we all know what happens when Ohio State maximizes their talent. They win. They win a lot. They win over and over and over again. And this is one of those games you can't go into with the wrong game plan or forsake just adjusting on the fly, because you might lose. But you got Jeremiah Smith, number 4. You got number 2 in Emeka Egbuka. You got some guys on Ohio State's offense that could be game changers or game wreckers. And when I think about a game wrecker on offense, I think about Jeremiah Smith. He's that dude. He's unreal. 12 touchdowns, over 1,000 receiving yards during his freshman campaign at Ohio State. A guy that said he wants to be pushed like a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant, a conversation that he had with Brian Hartline before the playoffs started. A guy that has the maturity of, say, a seasoned vet in college football, but he's only 19 years old. He just turned 19. There's so many positive about Jeremiah Smith. But he's even out there on the field and realizing that matchup y'all got on me is not going to work. What y'all are trying to do, it's night-night for you. It's just going to be embarrassing for you. Oh, you got this guy trying to guard me? It's night-night for him. I'm going to the end zone. Jeremiah Smith understands so many things. Then when you add in 6'3", 220, some say 225, he runs a 4.3 40. I haven't clocked him. I just watched my eyeballs with him on the football field. Homie runs a 4.3, even if he runs a 4.4. He is a fast young man. And every time I watch Jeremiah Smith play, I realize Ohio State needs to get him the ball more. More against Tennessee, more against Penn State, more against Oregon, more against Indiana. Those are the top teams they played via the rankings. More. Get that man the ball more. Because there's no reason at all that he shouldn't have had 15 receiving touchdowns this year, and he could have been over 12 to 1,300 receiving yards this year as well through 13 games. That's what reality could have been. Even reality could have been, hey, if you do a couple things more, Jeremiah Smith, against Oregon, would Ohio State have been able to win the game? Maybe. I mean, these are things that are hypothetical. That's the past. Moving forward, Will Howard, number 18, find a way to get the ball to number 4. I'm not here to project his stats for that game. I'm not trying to project and say, oh, he's going to do this. Oh, he's going to do that. I did that for Trevion Henderson. We're going to revisit that later on in today's show. but Jeremiah Smith just needs to be the guy that is a focal point of Ohio State's game plan to beat Oregon. But also, I think about Jeremiah Smith being the focal point and feeding Jeremiah Smith. I think about his running mates. A guy that wears number 2, a guy that wears number 17. Emeka Egbuka, and Cardinal Tate. As Emeka Egbuka talked about, Ohio State really doesn't have a number 3 receiver. They have 3 number 1 receivers. And I think that's very accurate because I said it to, I think it was Ryan Roberts, my favorite NFL draft analyst, and I said, hey, man, Cardinal Tate, if he was at any other school in the country, he'd probably be starting. Now, I don't know all the rosters backwards and forwards to know, oh, no, he wouldn't start here, but he would start there. I don't know all of that, but I would say there's a good chance that at almost any other school in the country, he would be a starting receiver. By the numbers and by the stats, he's the number 3 receiver, but, man, he is a dog. And the fact that Ohio State has 3 number 1 receivers going to Pasadena, going to the Rose Bowl, where the last time Ohio State was in the Rose Bowl, Jackson Smith and Jigba set records. What was it, 60 receptions, 300-plus receiving yards? He was just a dog. They had no answer for him. Running all up and down the sideline, all across the field. They had no answer. And him and C.J. Stroud were just dialed in and locked in and said, hey, man, whatever we got to do to win this game. If it's a 50-point win, a 3-point win, it does not matter. Whatever we got to do to win this game, we're going to make that thing happen. And they did that. I mean, shout out and hats off to those 2 guys. But that's be the same thing this time. For Will Howard, we see what happens at Ohio State when they simply just focus on their best players. Is the best player going to be Jeremiah Smith? Yes, give him the ball. Is one of the best players Emeka Egbuka? Yes, give him the ball. Is one of the best players Cardinal Tate? Yes, give him the ball. Whatever you got to do to get your best guys the ball, make sure you make that thing happen. It shouldn't be rocket science because it's not. It's simple. If I'm Chip Kelly, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I got my notepad out. I'm on the plane, flying out to Pasadena, and I'm trying to take my notes and trying to get things right. And I'm trying to think, okay, we see what Oregon did on the film. We see exactly what Oregon does well. We see what Oregon does as a football team. And I'm trying to sit here and realize, if Oregon puts this matchup out, which one of these 3 guys should I focus on? It really shouldn't matter. All 3 of them can get open. All three of them know how to attack different defenses. All 3 of them know how to attack different, is it bump and run or however the quarter's lined up on them. All 3 of them know how to do certain things. So it really shouldn't matter. But with those 3 guys, it's a huge luxury. And I don't like going out and saying focus on the outside guys. But when it comes to this team, I think you got to figure out how to get the ball in that guy's hands on the outside. Now, the one luxury that you have with Jeremiah Smith, and really all 3 of these guys, but we mainly see it with Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, they can both go in motion, be more of a touch sweep or jet sweep. I'm in EA Sports College Football 25. Jet touch pass is what that was in my brain. Jet touch pass. The jet touch pass or the jet sweep or whatever it might be, the smoke screens or the tunnel screens, whatever it is. Find various ways. Be very creative. But while you're being creative, utilize 3 guys. Number 17, number 2, and number 4. But while focusing on those 3 guys, number 4 needs to be the guy. One thing I said a lot when Ezekiel Elliott was at Ohio State was feed Zeke. You saw him all the time. Get that spoon out. Hey, saying, feed me. And I love when he do that because you could tell he was just in the zone. And that's one thing I think about when I think about Jeremiah Smith in this game in the Rose Bowl. It's the granddaddy of them all. It's the one game New Year's Day, 5 p.m. Eastern. You're going to get that flyover. You're going to have the contrast between the game being in the daytime and then ending in the nighttime. I mean, it's just that bowl game that gets everybody tapped into it. And I hope at some point during this game, we get a flashback to Ezekiel Elliott. Not that Jeremiah Smith is going to play a running back like Zeke, but Jeremiah Smith just goes out there and he starts cooking, starts feeling it. Hey, man, feed me. Just give me the rock. Feed me, because you need to have him. You want him to have that kind of mindset. You want your best players in this kind of game when it's do or die, win or go home, to not have a 1-2-3 Cancun mindset, but to have a 1-2-3 who we playing next mindset. That's what you want your guys to have, the kind of mindset you want your players to have. And for Jeremiah Smith, I think he understands the assignment. For Cardinal Tate and Emeka Egbuka, I also believe they understand the assignment. And I just can't wait to see these three guys play in the Rose Bowl against Oregon. They're hungry for payback. They're hungry for more. They want to make sure at the end of the day, they are not heading home and not and for the end of the season, but they're heading back to the Columbus, preparing for yet another college football playoff game.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Now, that game against Oregon, that's a good indicator that Boise State can hang with the best of the best in college football.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to get an actual explanation from an actual expert of how Boise State played Oregon tough. That was a 3-point game. So if they made that one close, then the natural explanation is that Boise State's going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Penn State. I say not quite, but you remember that week 2 game pretty vividly. Spencer, why was Boise State so close to Oregon in that game?
Well, they had a couple of really key moments in the second half where they forced Oregon turnovers to flip the momentum. You know, Boise State had the lead going into the half. They got Ashton Jeanty going in the early portion of that game. And then from there on out, they were exchanging blows. But it felt, there was a moment in the third quarter where it felt like Oregon was going to go and pull away. And you go, oh, okay, now they're going to settle in. They had a 7-point lead. They had the ball. And then Oregon goes down the field, and Boise State's defense forces a turnover. And it wasn't anything in particular that was sloppy from the Ducks. It was just a good play by the Boise State defender. And then all of a sudden, they go down and score on the next play. And then Oregon has the ball. And then Oregon fumbles again, and Boise State scores a few plays later. And you look up, and Oregon fans are going, we went from 7-point lead with the ball to all of a sudden down 7 points. What's going on? And then the next sequence was Oregon taking a kickoff back to the house, which was actually dropped at the 1-yard line. Jade Lamar picked up the ball, and he's an Oregon legend because of it. But that's kind of how the game progressed. There was certainly an opportunity for Oregon to open the game up more than it ended up being, which was a narrow 3-point win, but it didn't get there because Boise State's defense had a couple of really good moments. And I think they have to be more than just Ashton Jeanty to hang with Penn State. I mean, Jeanty, of course, has to have a good game. He's got to be able to run the football, get some explosive plays, and make it easier for the Broncos offense. But that's not really what I'm most interested to see, because I think, Zach, Boise State could have 200 yards from Ashton Jeanty on the ground, and they still lose the game by 10 to 14 points because Penn State is playing really good football right now. Saw that against SMU in the first playoff game. And in particular, yeah, we'll talk about the Boise State defense, but I'm looking at Maddox Madsen here because this is not somebody who folks outside the program expected to start coming into the year. He won the starting job against Malachi Nelson, who has since transferred out from the Broncos football program. He has shown why he won that particular job. But when he struggles, Boise State struggles. And they've only had the one loss this year to Oregon, but they've had close games. And those close games have arrived and have coincided with Madsen's lowest completion percentage games of the year, save for the Oregon State game, which was mildly competitive, but not intensely. So I think it's got all the potential to be a great matchup. But as I talked about last week on my show, Penn State deserves to be an 11.5-point favorite. That doesn't mean they're going to win the game by 30 points. But are they worthy of Vegas saying, hey, we see the possibility of Penn State opening this one up? I believe that answer is yes.
So long story short here, you and I agree in the fact that looking at this Fiesta Bowl game between Penn State and Boise State, that just because the Broncos played Oregon tough early in the season does not mean that it's deja vu all over again. This is a different Oregon team, as we've seen, a better one. Those first couple of weeks, they struggled. This is also a different Penn State team. I think Penn State's playing some of its best football. And I'm not saying that Boise State isn't. It's not that Boise State isn't playing it it's had a little bit of a break, right? With the bye week and everything, getting into the semifinal game. But I look at this Boise State team and I don't know that they've done anything they have a specific identity, that this is Ashton Genty's team. Maddox Madsen's a game manager. This is a defense that we don't ask it to do a whole lot in terms of, because everything runs through Ashton Genty. So we'll talk about it more in the show with how Boise State is going to have to adapt if Ashton Genty is limited to some regard. But that's what I mean, is that this team hasn't gone through this transitory period where you see the beginning of it, because they struggled just with Wyoming a few weeks back, not too long ago. And I know that they're getting healthier at the right time, which is fitting going into the postseason. My point being is that I can see the difference between the first half of the season Penn State and the present Penn State. Same thing with Oregon. With Boise State, I don't see that. I see a team that still runs through its same identity with it's Ashton Genty or nothing.
I don't know that that's a bad thing necessarily.
I mean, if it's broke, don't fix it. Or
I think that Dirk Cutter, the offensive coordinator, is one of the most underrated coordinators in all of football. And if people aren't aware of how good he's been this year, they could very well see that. And maybe Boise State doesn't go for 35, 38 points or put up, 45 like Oregon did in the Big Ten championship game. But his timing of the run and the play action of when he makes certain calls, it's so good. And it's weird to say, he's an underrated guy as an offensive coordinator when he's been around football for so long. But when you hear, conversation for the Broyles Award, you're not going to hear Dirk Cutter's name out there. If you talk about coordinators that could become head coaches, I don't see his name popping up on any list. The coaching carousel's been going round and round. I didn't see his name out there. So that's why I say he's flying under the radar a little bit, because I think he's really good. The way they use the tight ends, in particular in the play action game, I think has been awesome. I think they do a really good job of always seeming to make those calls at the exact right moments in the game. So, but I want to go back to something you said, because I'm sure Boise State fans are already hopping on you in the comments here, Zach, and you used the bugaboo word, game manager. It has such a negative connotation. I don't really know why. Mm-hmm. I mean,
can he take over games?
No,
he can't.
He cannot. But I think when people hear that word, they think, he's limited. Well, that doesn't mean he isn't going to make some good throws. Yeah. Go look at the best plays that he's made this year. Go watch Boise State when they have thrown for some big yardages this year. He's had a couple of games against Georgia Southern. He had 280 yards. He had 307 against San Diego State. And in the other games, he's been under 200 far more often than not. But what you're going to see from this Broncos offense and what could allow them to move the ball with some success to hang around with Penn State in this spot is he will make some throws that you don't think he should be able to make, because he's not that big. He's not that fast. He's not even that experienced relative to some of the quarterbacks in college football. I mean, he's not as experienced as Drew Aller.
He's one of the smarter quarterbacks in all of it. Drew Aller is too. Drew Aller's a smart quarterback in college football. So is Madsen, and that's why you don't see him make a lot of mistakes, because nothing fools him.
Yeah, that is the bet. I think you hit the nail on the head. He is an incredibly high IQ guy who knows how to work within his own physical limitations to go out and execute the offense at a high level. So, game managing quarterbacks, I think, has a really negative connotation compared to what the reality actually is. Whereas you would not say that, a ball distributing point guard from, the old school NBA, like Rajon Rondo on that 08 Celtics team that won a championship. He was my favorite guy to play with in 2K, because I'd rack up 20 assists with him. He didn't score. He couldn't shoot. But gosh almighty, for what he was needed to do, he's really good at it. And Maddox Madsen has been exceptional this year. He's thrown a whopping 3 interceptions all season long. So he's been really good. And I think that's why Boise State has the ability to hang around in this game. Yeah. But they're going to have to play very complete. They have to play a B+, A- sort of game Whereas I feel like Penn State could roll out with a C plus, B minus, and still go out and win.
And that's why they've moved from a 10.5 to an 11.5 point favorite, as you see over per our friends at FanDuel. Now, still to come on this show, Ashton Genty is the heartbeat of this Boise State team. But if he is somewhat phased out of the game, if he is limited, if he is neutralized, can Boise State even do anything to overcome that?